I sit at the dining table, my fingers gliding along the rim of a crystal water glass, the kind that sparkles under chandelier light as if it knows it belongs to a showcase. Every place setting is perfect. Mom's mahogany table gleams beneath the glow, white roses spilling dramatically from her best vases, polished silverware lined up like soldiers awaiting inspection. Dad's imported scotch passes from hand to hand among his golf buddies, their laughter punctuating the air like champagne corks popping. Tonight is Parker's night. The golden child's coronation. At 23 he sits at the center of it all, broad-shouldered in his tailored blazer, his smile radiating the kind of self-assurance reserved for those who've never once had to wonder whether the universe would deliver in their favor. Dad rises at the head of the table. He lifts his glass, taps it with the edge of a silver spoon. The sharp ping cuts through conversation. The room falls into silence, anticipation thickening the air. I glance toward Mom. She doesn't look at me. Instead, her hand flutters to her pearl necklace, fiddling with it in the nervous gesture I've known since childhood. Everyone, Dad begins, his voice ringing with the authority he usually reserves for business negotiations and announcements at the firm. If I could have your attention. Tonight isn't only about celebrating Parker's graduation from Northwestern. Parker sits a little straighter, basking in the glow of expectation. Catherine, Dad calls, and his secretary, yes, his secretary at his son's graduation dinner, emerges from the hallway holding a small box wrapped with precision, finished with a blue satin ribbon. Dad presents it to Parker as though he's conferring a crown. Son, your mother and I could not be prouder. 4 years of hard work. A business degree. Ready to join the family firm. We thought this deserved a proper recognition. Parker accepts the box with the poised, pleasant surprise of someone who's been trained his whole life to expect the world and still act gracious when it arrives. Open it, Mom urges, her voice sparkling with excitement. Parker unties the ribbon, lifts the lid, and withdraws a single shining key on a leather fob. His brows rise, though his smile never falters. That, Dad declares, projecting his voice for everyone to hear, is the key to Unit 1805 at the Waterstone overlooking Riverview. A 2-bedroom condo. A proper place to begin your professional life. Gasps and applause erupt around the table. Glasses are raised in a chorus of congratulations. Parker beams. Me. I maintain my smile. Muscles locked into place, cheeks aching with the practiced restraint of years. It's the same smile I wore when Parker was handed a car on his 16th birthday while I received driving lessons at a community center. The same one I used when my bookkeeping paychecks went to household bills while Parker's tuition at Northwestern was covered, no questions asked. I don't reach for my glass of water again. My hand might shake. Hours later the house grows quiet. Guests filter out, their laughter trailing into the suburban night. I'm left in the kitchen stacking dessert plates, scraping frosting into the trash, while champagne flutes sit abandoned in the sink like forgotten trophies. Dad appears in the doorway, loosening his tie. He watches me, arms folded, the smell of scotch lingering on his breath. Jenny, he says, his voice crisp, businesslike. We need to talk about your living situation. I pause, plate in hand. My living situation? Yes. He speaks with the tone of a man restructuring a company, not a father addressing his daughter. Now that Parker's settled, we're reassessing household arrangements. Beginning next month, we'll need you to contribute $1,200 toward rent. The plate in my hands feels suddenly heavy. Rent? You're 25, Jenny, he continues. You're working 2 jobs. It's time you paid your fair share. Fair share. The words splinter something inside my chest. Last year alone, I contributed $15,000. Groceries, utilities, property taxes when their cash flow dried up. Not to mention the countless unpaid hours I spent untangling their chaotic finances, sorting receipts, preparing their tax returns. My fair share has been quietly holding this family together while Parker played Golden Son. I see, I say evenly, though my pulse thrums painfully at my temples. It's what adults do, Dad adds. Pay their way. And then Parker strolls past the doorway, spinning the shiny new condo key around his finger like a toy. He doesn't even glance at me. Of course he doesn't. This moment isn't unexpected. It's simply the culmination of years. Me working late nights on the books while Parker went to frat parties. My accounting certification dismissed as glorified bookkeeping, while Parker's business degree was paraded like the family's prize jewel. Mom's hushed call to her friend last month, whispering with pride, "Parker is our family's future." I place my hands flat on the counter. "May I ask why there's such a difference in how you're treating us?" Dad's expression shifts. Annoyance flashes first, then impatience. "When you accomplish something worth celebrating like graduating college, then we'll talk." The words hang like smoke in the air. "I'm 3 credits away," I reply softly, "from finishing my accounting degree." Silence. He blinks. He didn't know. Or worse, he didn't care enough to remember. "That's nice," he finally says, regaining composure. "But Parker graduated from a real university, not some online program." I nod once. "Thank you for clarifying." Later, in the solitude of my childhood bedroom, I pull out my record book. 5 years of entries. Every grocery receipt, every tax payment, every bill I covered, documented meticulously. Evidence of invisible work that no one ever saw or wanted to see. Behind the ledger sits Grandma Clara's photo album. I take it down, running my fingers over the worn leather cover. Inside, her handwriting fills the margins, little notes attached to photographs. There she is, her arm around me at the lake house when I was 12, both of us laughing at something beyond the frame. I flip to the back of the album. Tucked inside, a small index card slips free. My breath catches when I see her elegant script. SB, trust minus $250,000. SB Jenny Bennett. My stomach turns. My hands tremble. I grab my phone and text Aunt Susan. "I need to talk to you about Grandma Clara's trust." The message sends with a tiny whoosh. A sound that feels like a chain snapping free. The next day I sit in a squeaky vinyl booth at Cassidy's Diner, 30 miles from home. The air smells of bacon grease and stale coffee. It's not glamorous, but that's exactly why I chose it. Far enough from Dad's colleagues, far enough from Mom's bridge group. Aunt Susan slides into the booth across from me. Her silver-streaked hair is pulled into a bun, her eyes shadowed from lack of sleep. She clutches her purse like a shield. "You look so much like Clara," she says softly, studying me with eyes full of something between pride and sorrow. "She'd be proud of you, Jenny. So proud." The waitress drops off 2 steaming mugs. I curl my hands around mine, needing its warmth more than the caffeine. "I found something," I begin, "in Grandma's album. A note about a trust." Susan's lips press thin, her fingers drumming against her purse. Finally she exhales. "I've been waiting for this conversation for 3 years." Her words crash through me. My stomach knots tight. She reaches into her purse and pulls out a manila folder, the edges worn and softened by time. She hesitates before sliding it across the table. "Clara created a trust when you were 16. $250,000. For your education and future. I was the witness, but Robert had power of attorney after her stroke." I open the folder, my heartbeat hammering. At the top, Jameson Financial Trust. My name in bold type, Jenny Elizabeth Bennett Educational Trust. The room spins. "He took it," I whisper. "It's not a question." Tears brim in Susan's eyes. "I suspected. I wanted to be wrong. I didn't want to believe my own brother was capable of this." I flip through the pages. Bank statements, each one a knife. Withdrawals starting in 2018, accelerating through 2020. Every date aligns perfectly with Parker's tuition bills. Northwestern University's name blazes from the transaction details. "Grandma set this up for you," Susan says, voice breaking. "She saw how Robert favored Parker. He wanted to protect you. She wanted to make sure you'd be secure no matter what choices they made." My fingers still when I reach a transfer form. At the bottom, a signature. My signature. Except, it isn't. "This isn't mine," I say, my throat tightening. "This isn't my handwriting." Susan covers my hand with hers. "I know." The diner fades around me. The clatter of dishes, the hum of conversation, all of it blurs. It's not just theft. It's not just fraud. It's betrayal, carefully practiced, deliberately hidden, forged in my own name. "When did these transfers happen?" I ask, my fingers trembling slightly as I flip back to the pages showing the largest withdrawals. Susan exhales slowly as though the answer itself has weight. "The main transfers were in April of your senior year. April 2018. The words land like a stone in my stomach. My mind snaps back to that month. The the sterile white hospital room, the sharp smell of antiseptic, the beeping monitors that measured each breath I could barely catch. 3 days I spent in that bed, collapsed from exhaustion after months of balancing work, school, and household duties. 3 days blurred into one long haze of 4 drips and half dreams. And then, Dad appearing at my bedside, crisp paperwork in hand. His voice low, smooth, practiced. "Just school forms, Jenny. Nothing complicated." I hadn't read them. I trusted him. Trusted that no matter how much we clashed, no matter how much favoritism he showered on Parker, there were lines no father would cross. The memory claws its way to the surface, jagged and raw. "They used my hospitalization," I whisper, tasting iron in the back of my throat. The words feel poisonous, foreign yet undeniable. Susan nods slowly, her eyes darkening with sorrow. "Robert told me you agreed to help Parker with his college expenses, that you signed the forms willingly." Willingly. The lie burns. I turn another page, scanning signatures. My name scrawled in familiar loops and slants. But I know my own hand. I know the slight tilt I give my Y, the way my J curves sharp at the top. These are not mine. Not all of them. Who forged the later ones? I ask, though part of me already knows. Susan lowers her gaze to her untouched coffee, the steam curling between us like something alive. Parker has always been talented at copying handwriting. Even as a child. The pieces rearranged themselves in my mind, snapping into brutal clarity. Parker's high school days, how he forged excuse notes to skip classes, how he doodled caricatures of teachers with their exact signatures as punchlines. How the family laughed, called it a gift, harmless fun. My father once ruffled his hair and called him a natural. Not harmless. Not innocent. A skill cultivated, perfected, weaponized. This was never about me not being good enough, I murmur, the realization cutting cold and merciless. They knew exactly what they were doing. Every choice was deliberate. The drive home stretches endlessly, the highway gray and unwelcoming. 30 miles of silence filled with the sound of my own ragged breathing. I pull into the driveway and sit in the car, engine ticking as it cools. My phone screen glows in the dim light. My mother's Instagram post appears in my feed. A photo from Parker's graduation party. Everyone's smiling, champagne glasses raised, the lighting soft and perfect. The caption, "So proud of our perfect family. Parker's success and Jenny's uniqueness. Blessed mama, proud parents." Uniqueness. My mother's code word, the one she always used when there was nothing tangible to praise. A polite placeholder, a public mask that hid the imbalance. My throat tightens, but I force myself to swallow it down. Inside, voices spill from my father's study. The door is cracked just enough for me to see him, my mother, and Parker clustered around the desk. "The Anderson account should be your first priority," Dad says, his tone firm and businesslike. "It's the cornerstone of the firm. Eventually, all of this will be yours to manage." My mother smiles, her hand resting proudly on Parker's shoulder. "You'll do wonderfully, sweetheart. You were born for this." The words hit harder than any blow. A crystal-clear vision of the future emerges. Parker the heir, groomed to inherit not just the business but the family legacy. Me. My role has always been silent labor. The invisible scaffolding holding everything together. Contributions expected, sacrifices demanded, recognition denied. Back in my room, I grab my phone and finally dial a number I've saved for years but never dared use. The line clicks. "Delaney Law Offices," a polished voice answers. "This is Jenny Bennett," I say, steady despite the tremor in my chest. "I need to speak with Mark Delaney about a trust fund my grandmother, Clara Bennett, established." 20 minutes later, Mark appears on my laptop screen. His expression grows darker with every document I show him. "Jenny," he says at last, voice grave. "This isn't just unfair, it's illegal. We're talking multiple counts of fraud, forgery, and misappropriation of fiduciary funds. If proven, your father could face serious consequences." I stare at the papers spread across my bed, my name typed and forged across them. "I don't want revenge," I say quietly. "I want what's mine. And then peace." Mark nods once. "Then we'll pursue this carefully. Discretion but firmness. You'll get justice, Jenny." Later, when I step back into my bedroom from the bathroom, a new document lies waiting on the center of my bed. My stomach drops. A rental agreement, printed neatly. My name typed at the top. Monthly rate, $1,200. Highlighted in yellow. Clause 8b. Failure to make timely payments will result in immediate termination of residency. My mother lingers in the doorway, fingers twisting her wedding ring as though it could protect her from my gaze. Your father just wants you to learn responsibility, she says softly. I look her straight in the eye. I've been responsible since I was 16. Her lips part then close again. No defense. No denial. The silence between us says everything. Before dawn I pack my life into boxes and bags. Documents. Financial records. Clothing. Photos with Grandma Clara's smiling face. I leave behind the stuffed animals lined neatly on my bed, small sentinels of a childhood I can no longer claim. In the attic, a cedar chest yields one final gift. Grandma Clara's journals, dust thick on the covers. I flip through until her looping script catches my eye. I worry about Robert's influence on the children, especially Jenny. He views her strength as competition, not legacy. I must protect what I can. Her words feel like a hand on my shoulder, a whisper through time. As the first light of morning seeps through my window, I place a handwritten letter on the bedspread. 3 pages, every contribution I've made to this family, every betrayal I've uncovered, every truth now undeniable. I fold the blanket over it, leaving the note like a tombstone for the life I've buried. The front door closes softly behind me. No dramatic slam, no goodbye. Just the quiet end of one chapter. 2 hours later, Lake Michigan glitters under the morning sun as I pull into Aunt Susan's gravel driveway. Her cedar-sided cottage stands firm among whispering pines, weathered but welcoming. I grip the wheel, breathing in determination like oxygen. Susan appears on the porch, wiping her hands on a faded apron, her smile carrying the echo of Grandma Clara. You made it, she says, hurrying down to wrap me in a hug that smells of cinnamon and coffee. Inside her home is warmth, wood quilts, sunlight through windows. She leads me to a small room transformed into an office. A desk set before the window, supplies neatly waiting. I remembered you said you needed 3 more credits, she says softly. Thought you'd want to keep going. My chest aches with gratitude. Such a small gesture, yet it feels monumental. Acknowledgement of me, of my goals, my worth. That evening my phone begins its relentless buzzing. My mother's voice fills the screen. Jenny, please tell us where you are. We're worried sick. Your father isn't himself. Please come home so we can talk. I place the phone face down, but not before another notification flashes. An email from Dad. Subject line: Family financial documents. For once, the words don't fill me with dread. They fill me with resolve. Jenny, return all financial records immediately. Your removal of these documents constitutes theft of family property. The email glows on my phone screen, cold and sterile as a summons. My father's words aren't just a demand, they're a declaration of war. Susan notices the stiffness in my shoulders. From her armchair across the room, a book lies forgotten in her lap. Her eyes narrow, reading me more accurately than the printed words ever could. They'll keep trying, she says softly. I nod, jaw tight. Of course they will. Another notification flashes. This time a text from Parker. Dad's furious. What did you take? Not where are you? Not are you safe? Not Jenny, please come home. No. Just concerned for what their father might have lost. Not what they'd already stolen from me. My thumb hovers over the screen for a beat and then I press down, holding until the phone shuts off completely. The silence that follows is heavier than the pinging alerts that had filled the air before. They are more worried about their documents than about my well-being. That truth, though bitter, is clarifying. Susan's mouth tightens. I'm not surprised, she murmurs, turning her gaze back to the fire flickering in the hearth. Her voice carries no venom, only resignation, like someone who has long since learned the depths to which her own brother will sink. The next morning, Mark Delaney arrives at the cottage. I expect a man in a pressed suit, polished shoes and slicked back hair, the kind of lawyer my father hires. Instead, a weathered man in a flannel shirt and scuffed work boots steps through Susan's front door. He looks more like a farmer or lumberjack than a courtroom strategist. But his handshake is firm, his eyes sharp and assessing, missing nothing. At the kitchen table, the trust documents sprawl across the surface like an autopsy. Mark scans every page with deliberate care, tapping one clause with his thick index finger. Your grandmother was thorough, he says. Robert had fiduciary responsibility here. Using these funds for Parker's tuition wasn't just questionable, it was a breach of trust. I push forward additional papers. My forged signatures glare back at me. He faked these, I say, my voice steady though my pulse races. Here. And here. Mark nods grimly, making precise notes. We'll begin with a formal demand letter. Give them a chance to make this right before we escalate. A humorless laugh escapes me. They won't. I know them too well. No, probably not, Mark agrees. His pen scratches across the page. But the court likes to see we tried. Hours later, combing through account statements, I stumble across something that punches the air from my lungs. The down payment on Parker's downtown condo. A 2-bedroom unit worth nearly $500,000. And the money? Pulled directly from the trust. Unbelievable, I whisper, my chest tightening. Mark takes the statement, whistles softly, not even attempting to disguise his reaction. They weren't even subtle by that point. The certified letter goes out the next day. I imagine it arriving at their immaculate house, the polished brass mailbox swallowing what might as well be a live grenade. I see my father's face, stoic and composed as he signs for it. I imagine the fury that will ignite once he opens it, the legal language detonating like a bomb in his carefully curated world. Meanwhile, life at the cottage settles into rhythm. Mornings are for finishing my online classes, afternoons for helping Susan in the garden, hands in the dirt grounding me in ways I hadn't realized I needed. Evenings belong to textbooks and review sessions for my final accounting exam. And always, the lake is there. Sometimes glassy and serene, sometimes thrashing under storm winds, but constant in a way my family never was. 2 weeks in, I sit at my laptop and submit my final exam. Seconds later, the screen flashes. 97%. Susan insists on a celebration. She retrieves a bottle of champagne she had tucked away and 2 delicate crystal flutes that once belonged to Grandma Clara. To your persistence, she says, raising her glass. Our glasses meet with a soft chime. A bittersweet ache blooms under my ribs. I always imagined this moment. Earning my degree, hearing my family say they were proud. But they aren't here, and the silence of their absence is as loud as any applause. The next day, a thick envelope arrives in the mail. My degree certificate rests inside, my name etched in bold calligraphy, Jennifer Elizabeth Bennett. The sight feels like both victory and indictment. I've accomplished what they said I couldn't, without their support, without the money meant for me. But the celebration barely settles before Mark calls. His voice is clipped, angry. Their attorney responded. They're denying everything. He hesitates before continuing. Jenny, they've submitted your hospitalization records. They're painting you as mentally unstable, financially irresponsible. A particularly brutal chill threads through me. My exhaustion, my collapse senior year, twisted into ammunition against me. There's more, Mark adds. Parker submitted an affidavit. Claims you verbally gifted him your inheritance. The laugh that escapes me is sharp, brittle. Of course he did. Lies, layered on lies, with the confidence of someone who has always been believed. That evening, the cottage phone rings. Susan answers, listens, her expression hardening. She covers the receiver with her hand. It's your mother, she says, then holds out the phone. I press it to my ear, bracing. Jenny, my mother's voice wavers, threaded with false fragility. Why are you doing this to our family? The familiar tug of guilt rises instinctively, only to dissolve under the weight of truth. I'm not doing anything to our family, I answer, my tone even, resolute. I'm claiming what was always mine. The next day brings unexpected reinforcement. Clara's former financial advisor, Michael Winters, reaches out to Mark. I've been retired for years, he explains on the conference call, but I kept duplicates of all the trust documents. Clara was explicit. That trust was for Jenny. Robert swore he would honor her wishes. Piece by piece, the evidence grows into a mountain. Too high to scale, too solid to topple. Even Mark begins to sound confident. This isn't just questionable, he says. It's clear-cut fraud. We'll move forward to court. That night, while sifting through Grandma Clara's worn Bible, something Susan kept on her shelf as a keepsake, I find a sealed envelope tucked between its pages. My name written in Clara's elegant hand. My hands shake as I unfold the yellowed stationery. My dear Jenny, it begins. If you are reading this, then something has gone wrong. I have always seen Robert's favoritism toward Parker, even when Elaine would not admit it. I fear what this could mean for you after I am gone. The trust is my way of protecting you. This money is not a gift. It is justice. I have watched you work twice as hard for half the recognition. Remember this, Jenny. Your worth has never depended on their approval. Hold to your strength. It will carry you when the truth emerges. All my love. Grandma Claire. Tears blur the ink. She had known. She had seen. She had loved me enough to leave a safeguard against the very betrayal I now fought to uncover. I fold the letter carefully, press it back into its envelope and set it on my desk. Standing at the window, twilight spilling indigo across the lake, I whisper a promise to her memory. I'll reclaim what's mine. Not for revenge. For justice. For the truth. The next morning, Mark and I step into the courthouse. The marble floors echo beneath my heels, fluorescent lights harsh against polished stone. My blazer feels heavy on my shoulders, but my spine is straight. Mark glances at me. You ready? I've been ready for years, I say. I just didn't know it. We take our seats outside courtroom B. I smooth invisible wrinkles from my skirt, organize the folders in my lap, steady my breath. The doors open. My father enters first, his attorney by his side. His hair is perfectly cut, his suit finely tailored, but his skin has a sallow undertone, his eyes cold as January ice over Lake Michigan. He locks eyes with me. For the first time I don't look away. My mother follows, pearls at her throat, makeup carefully concealing exhaustion. When she sees me, her steps falter. And then Parker, navy suit, shoulders hunched, gaze fixed on the floor tiles as though they might open and swallow him. He looks smaller than I've ever seen him. Mark leans close, his voice barely above a whisper. They're scared. Remember that. My mother peels away from my father, reaching for me, desperation in her face. Jenny, please, we can still be a family. I take a single step back, keeping my voice steady. We're family, Mom. That's why this hurts so much. Her face crumples under the weight of my words, lips parting as if to form a reply, but before she can, the bailiff's sharp voice slices through the tension. Our case number is called. Inside the courtroom, the air feels heavier than stone, pressing on my shoulders as I take my seat beside Mark. I sit ramrod straight, hands folded tightly in my lap, while Dad's attorney launches into his opening statement. His tone is polished, his arguments rehearsed, but the words feel like a knife dragged slowly across skin. He paints me as the ungrateful daughter, the selfish child who never appreciated the roof over her head, twisting years of sacrifice into the shape of debt. To him, the story is simple. Jenny Bennett misunderstood normal family financial planning. The judge, a woman in her 60s with intelligent, piercing eyes behind rimless glasses, listens without so much as a twitch of expression. Her silence is formidable. She is a wall, and neither side can yet guess which way she'll lean. When Mark rises, the stillness of the room shifts. His voice carries, steady, clear, and unflinching, as he unfurls the truth document by document. He walks the judge through the bank transfers that lined up perfectly with Parker's tuition payments. He presents the withdrawal slips, every one branded with my forged signature. He highlights Grandma Clara's explicit instructions for the trust, instructions my father trampled with audacity. Your Honor, Mark concludes, his voice sharpening like a blade, this isn't simply careless bookkeeping or poor financial management. This is a deliberate, calculated fraud committed against Miss Bennett, and what's worse, it occurred while she was hospitalized and unable to defend her interests. The judge leans forward, her eyes narrowing as she studies the side-by-side comparisons of my real signature and the forged ones. Her gaze lifts to Dad, who squirms in his chair. For the first time in my life, I watch him falter under scrutiny that isn't mine. When my name is called, I rise. My heels click softly on the polished floor, but every step feels weighted with years of betrayal. Standing at the witness stand, I lift my hand for the oath, the words heavy and final as they pass my lips. Miss Bennett, Mark begins gently, please explain your financial contributions to your family household. I steady my breath, my mind recalling the precise figures like rows of numbers carved into my bones. $15,387 last year alone, I answer. Then I explain: 2 jobs while attending online classes, the nights without sleep, the bills I helped cover, the silent sacrifices never acknowledged. I describe the moment I stumbled upon the truth of the trust. A discovery made not through transparency but through the glittering condo gifted to Parker upon his graduation. A gift bought with money that was meant for me. Dad's attorney pushes back, pacing like a predator. Isn't it true, he presses, that your parents provided you with food, housing, and support for your entire life? Yes, I say evenly. And in return I provided over $40,000 in financial assistance and hundreds of hours of unpaid bookkeeping services for their business since I was 18. That wasn't charity, it was partnership. And they betrayed it. Gasps ripple faintly from the gallery. When Dad takes the stand, his carefully constructed composure begins to crumble under the judge's pointed questioning. These were family funds, he barks finally, the mask slipping. I made decisions as head of the household. The judge removes her glasses, her tone cutting through the air like steel. Mr. Bennett, a trust is not a household decision. It is a legal obligation. What I see here is not a misunderstanding, it appears to be a deliberate breach of fiduciary duty. Dad's face flushes crimson, his jaw tightening as he spits out. My daughter has always been difficult. That's enough, the judge interjects sharply. We will recess for 20 minutes. In the hallway, the mask of civility shatters further. Dad's attorney corners Mark, sliding a manila folder toward him like a secret bargain. I catch enough of the whispered exchange, an offer. $125,000 to settle, less than half of what was stolen. Tell her to take it, the attorney mutters. Family disputes get ugly. Mark's eyes flick toward mine. I shake my head. The number climbs to $175,000 before recess ends, desperation bleeding through their voices. They're scared now, Mark murmurs. They know the ground is slipping beneath them. I don't want scraps, I tell him. I want what was meant for me. Not a penny less. Near the water fountain, Mom approaches me, her eyes glistening with tears. I knew it wasn't right, she whispers, her voice barely audible. But I didn't stop it. I just wanted peace. For the first time I truly see her. The woman who taught me to paint watercolors on quiet Sunday afternoons. The woman who never raised her voice but also never raised her hand to shield me. This isn't about punishment, Mom, I say softly. It's about justice. Sometimes peace costs too much. When court resumes, the air is different. The judge delivers her ruling with clipped precision, each word striking like a gavel of its own. Full restoration of the trust fund. Legal fees reimbursed. Additional penalties for fraudulent misappropriation. A complete accounting of all assets within 30 days. And then the final blow. Given Mr. Bennett's legal license and position of trust, I am referring this matter to the State Bar Association. The silence afterward is thunderous. Outside, the courthouse steps swarm with reporters, microphones shoved forward, questions shouted in a chaotic chorus. I shake my head, decline everyone. This story is mine, not theirs. Dad storms past me, his rage a storm bottled in human form. Parker lingers behind, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, his voice breaking when he says, Jenny, I didn't understand what we were doing. I study him, my brother. The boy who received everything I was denied, the boy who never once questioned why. Understanding requires wanting to see the truth, I tell him quietly before walking down the courthouse steps alone, toward the waiting car where Aunt Susan sits. The spring air greets me like a baptism. For the first time in years, my lungs fill all the way down to my stomach. Freedom feels like oxygen. The news spreads quickly in suburban Chicago circles. I hear about Dad's downfall not through gossip I seek, but through the local business journal Aunt Susan leaves by my coffee cup. Robert Bennett removed from the Community Foundation Board. Whispers that the Chamber of Commerce is next. I push the paper aside. I'm not collecting trophies from his downfall, I murmur. Susan arches a brow over her glasses. No one would blame you if you took satisfaction in it. I've got balance sheets to review for my first real client, I reply, tapping my laptop. That's more satisfying than watching him lose face. Her quiet nod is worth more than the headlines. My phone buzzes. A text. Mother. Not Elaine. Never Elaine. Still listed as mother in my contacts. A resistance to severing that last thin thread. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? Just us. The fifth request since the ruling. I've refused the previous 4. My finger hovers before typing. Perkins Cafe 10 a.m. Susan glances up. Elaine. I nod. She wants to meet. And you're going this time? Yes, I say, closing my laptop. Time to hear what she has to say. The next morning I find her at a corner table in Perkins. She looks smaller somehow. No pearls today, only a plain silver pendant resting against her collarbone. Her hands wrap around her mug as though it could warm what remains cold inside her. Thank you for coming, she says as I sit. Her voice cracks. I've left your father. The words hang fragile and raw. She explains. An apartment near the community college, part-time teaching art classes for children. It's not much, but it's a start. A start toward being someone I'm not ashamed to face in the mirror. Her eyes meet mine directly, more than they ever did in our home. I enabled something terrible, Jenny. I can't keep pretending our family was what I wanted people to believe. I search her face, waiting for the mask of performance she always wore at social gatherings, but instead I see something unfamiliar. Not grief. Not manipulation. Authenticity. We have a long way to go, I say finally. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the first small crack in the wall between us. That afternoon another message arrives. Parker. His first words since the ruling. I'm moving to Colorado. I need a fresh start. The condo's on the market. You'll get the proceeds through Mark. I never realized how unfair it all was. I'm sorry. I read it twice, then respond with measured truth. Growth begins with honesty. I hope you find yours. Simple words. They cost me nothing. But perhaps for the first time they give him everything. I no longer weigh my words against how much pain they might cause others. Instead, I measure them by how closely they align with the truth. A week after making that vow to myself, I signed papers for a modest craftsman-style house 3 blocks from the shore of Lake Michigan. The real estate agent, cheerful and well-meaning, congratulated me on securing my starter home. But I shook my head, smiling gently. This isn't a starter, I told her. It's exactly what I want. The house was small by most standards. 2 bedrooms, a narrow kitchen and a front porch with a creaking swing, but every detail spoke to me. The windows stretched wide and tall, flooding the rooms with morning light that seemed to wash away years of shadows. The porch swing creaked under my weight, and instead of hearing a flaw, I heard possibility. For the first time in my life, every square foot belonged wholly to me. My accounting practice began humbly. Just 3 clients who came to me hesitantly, unsure if I could deliver what larger, flashier firms promised. Yet slowly, 3 became 5 and 5 became 12. Word began to spread. There was a young accountant named Jenny who noticed discrepancies others overlooked, who didn't bury clients in jargon but instead spoke with clarity. In a world where financial language so often excluded and confused, I offered simplicity, honesty, and precision. Grandma Clara's trust fund remained almost entirely untouched, tucked safely into investments. It existed not as a lifeline but as a safety net, a reminder that I had been seen and valued by someone long before I fully saw myself. You've built something real here, my mentor Mark said one afternoon during our quarterly review meetings. His voice carried both pride and astonishment. Most people who went through what you did would still be licking their wounds. Wounds heal faster when you stop picking at them, I replied, sliding across the projections I had carefully put together for the coming year. My words were not bitter. They were simply true. Then came the email, arriving on an ordinary Thursday evening while I was reviewing client files. The sender's name tugged me back decades. Denise Harrington. We had once shared lunch tables in elementary school, our paths separating sometime in high school. Jenny, the email read, I heard about everything that happened with your family. I'm back in town after a divorce and could use a familiar face from simpler times. Coffee sometime. Old Jenny, the Jenny who lived in constant doubt, would have dissected the message, questioned Denise's motives, and wondered if curiosity was disguised as care. But new Jenny simply typed back, I'd like that. How's Saturday? Our coffee meeting stretched into brunch, and brunch became a long walk along the lakeshore. Denise's laughter was effortless, her questions unforced. She did not prod at wounds but acknowledged them with grace before moving forward. By autumn, we had a standing Sunday hiking ritual, our conversations woven into the rhythm of rustling leaves and shifting skies. Family isn't always blood, Denise remarked one evening as we watched the sky stain itself in watercolor hues over the water. Sometimes it's the people who see you clearly and stay anyway. On Clara's birthday, I carried wildflowers from my own garden to her grave. The cemetery was hushed, the ground littered with copper-colored leaves. I traced the carved letters of her name with my fingertips. "You saw it coming," I whispered softly. "You tried to protect me even after you were gone." I tucked a handwritten note among the flowers. "Thank you for seeing me." The wind lifted strands of my hair as I stood, carrying with it the faint scent of earth, autumn, and renewal. Clara's gift had been more than financial security. She had given me a blueprint for a life built not on appearances but on integrity. Her legacy lived not only in investments and bank accounts but in every choice I made that honored truth over convenience. 1 year, 365 days, had passed since I rose from my parents' gleaming mahogany dining table and walked away from their theater of appearances. Now, standing on my porch, I watched the sun paint Lake Michigan in molten gold. The breeze carried the scent of blossoms from my small garden, a garden I had planted with my own hands, its perennials returning stronger each season. The metaphor was too clear to ignore. My practice had grown to 27 clients, many of them small businesses weary of being overlooked by impersonal firms. They came to me not for flash but for honesty, for precision, for the comfort of being seen in their struggles. "Jenny, you have to taste this." Hannah, one of my closest friends, handed me a glass filled with something sparkling and pink, her latest kitchen experiment. I took it with a laugh, marveling at how the word friend had transformed in my life. Friends were not people who tolerated your presence at obligatory gatherings. Friends were the ones who showed up with boxes and takeout on moving day, the ones who texted to check in when you were buried in work, the ones who saw you without costumes or pretense. That evening, 6 of them filled my modest living room, gathered around a homemade cake glowing with 27 candles. No crystal, no imported scotch, just honest laughter free from judgment. To Jenny, Marcus, my very first client, toasted, his glass raised high. Proof that the best revenge is building something beautiful. I shook my head, smiling. "Not revenge," I corrected softly. "Peace." Later, when the house had emptied, the phone rang. My mother's number glowed on the screen. Our relationship now was careful, measured. Coffee meetings every few weeks, polite exchanges that avoided old battlegrounds. "Happy birthday, Jenny," she said. Her voice carried no theatrics, only sincerity. "Thank you," I replied, settling into the porch swing. "How's your watercolor class?" "My students are progressing," she said after a pause. "I'm teaching them to paint what they see, not what they think should be there." The irony lingered between us like unspoken smoke. We both heard it. "That's a valuable lesson," I said at last. "Yes," she agreed quietly. She hesitated, then added, "Parker called yesterday. He's interviewing for an assistant manager position at a sporting goods store in Denver. No family business. No shortcuts. He's trying to find his way on his own." "I hope it works out for him," I said truthfully. "He asked for your number. I told him I'd check with you first." I breathed deeply. "You can give it to him." Growth, I had learned, comes in small, often imperceptible steps. After we hung up, I reached for Clara's journals. Her looping handwriting chronicled generations of family patterns, the favoritism of sons, the burden placed on daughters to serve quietly. Her last entry ended with words that still rang like a bell inside me. "The cycle ends with you." Just last week, I met with Zoe, a 22-year-old woman starting her own graphic design business. Her finances were messy, her apartment cramped, her dreams enormous. "Everyone says I should get a real job first," she confessed nervously. "Build something that reflects your values, not other people's expectations," I told her, surprising myself with the steadiness of my conviction. The foundation matters more than how quickly the walls go up. The unopened Christmas card from my father remains in my desk drawer, deliberately untouched. Some bridges are not destroyed by accident, they are left in ashes by choice. From my porch, I survey everything I've built. The garden, the office filled with sunlight, the kitchen where meals nourish instead of impress. None of it inherited. All of it chosen. Except for Clara's watch, which rests on my wrist like a heartbeat, and her wisdom, which guides every decision I make. Her true gift was never just the trust fund. It was the courage she modeled. The quiet bravery of walking away when a table no longer has a seat for you. Sometimes the strongest act is not fighting for a place in someone else's house. It's building your own table, cutting the wood yourself, and surrounding it with people who see you clearly and stay.